Bitcoin, what are you doing? Are you finally rising now or what? So let's have a look what Bitcoin is doing, because I have a suspicion that it's going to disappoint us again, as it has done so very often in the course of the last 7 months. So we look at the weekly chart, we zoom in, and what do we see? A pathetic bounce that isn't even worth being called a bounce. I mean, just look at this, how it's still not rising. It's still not rising. It's still pretending to hang in there in the daily Bollinger Band. Maybe it's gonna retest again the lower band before going to the upside. That would be classic behavior, as it did here. You know, it went up, then down, then testing the upper band again before completely changing direction. So I wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin was doing that. Now the dollar index is finally slowing down a bit. My God, thank you so much, dollar index, for slowing down a bit. And the reason, of course, is the classic buy the rumor, sell the news type of situation, because yesterday there was the release of the Fed minutes, but the tone was very hawkish. So there will be at least a 50, if not a 75 basis point hike by the end of July. So in this meeting on the 27th of July, there will be a very high likelihood for a 75 basis point hike. And as we can see, the market is pricing this in with a probability of 95%. Okay? So that is the reason why the dollar has now stopped a bit its crazy rampage. That is a classic buy the rumor, sell the news type of situation, where before the event we see a strong pump, and when the event actually happens, that is when the dumps start occurring. Now, of course, long term the dollar is still insanely bullish, there's no question about it. There is a bearish divergence forming in the dollar chart. Higher highs here in the price, lower highs in the RSI. But as I said last time, that is not enough to rejoice. That is not a reason to think that the dollar will stop anytime soon. And this sucker could just continue pumping for quite a while, especially now if we look at the long-term picture, okay? So the long-term dollar picture. What do we see, friends? I actually see a quite bullish scenario. So this was a falling wedge structure in the making since the late 70s, I would say. A falling wedge structure in the making, and the dollar index has actually managed to break out of this multi-decade falling wedge structure. Look at this. So it has broken out, beautifully retested support. Look at this. Breaking out, retesting resistance that now has become support, and now going off to pump like crazy. And if I just look at it from a technical perspective, this could really be a long-term change of the dollar, because from the 70s onwards, I would say the dollar was in a declining trend, and from now on onwards, the dollar could go in a rising trend. Okay, it could go back into a rising trend, which would be quite funny, because everybody's saying the dollar is dying, the United States is in decline, they are the new Roman Empire, the United States will fall, the dollar is worthless, the dollar will be absolute garbage, it will fall to zero. And what is happening? The dollar is pumping like crazy. And if I just look at this structure here, like this long-term multi-decade structure, I can easily see the dollar becoming brutally powerful, as powerful or more powerful again than in the 70s or 80s. Like, I'm not joking. This is a long-term trend here. This could be a dollar super cycle that we are talking about here. So we had this area where the dollar, I would say, was in decline, and all the declinists were like, it's clear the dollar is dying, the American empire is dying, America will fall like the Roman Empire. And then BAM! What happens? The dollar goes on a huge rampage. That is clear, because many times things happen that nobody is expecting, and that is a beautiful thing, that nobody expected that the dollar would go on such a rampage. And that, friends, is the reason why Bitcoin and the stock market is behaving so freaking poorly. So as long as this sucker is pumping, and as we saw, unfortunately, this could still last for a very long time, because if I just copy this here, I mean, if I copy just this peak here, this could, look at this, how long this could still last. I mean, we could be looking at pumping of the dollar until late 2027. Who says that we are not going into a new dollar super cycle now and that this sucker will pump for 5 or 6 more years? There's nothing preventing this. Nothing is preventing this, and this, friends, would be insanely bad for Bitcoin. If the dollar index really goes into a new super cycle, this is just a theory, but if we look at this long-term structure, friends, this is not an unrealistic theory because surprise, surprise, what do we have here? Of course, we have additionally, so lower lows in the price, and what is the RSI doing? We have higher highs in the RSI. So the dollar is actually printing, or has actually been printing, a super long-term hidden bullish divergence structure. And I think that the breakout of this structure means that the dollar is actually seeing a new resurgence. And like what everybody's saying, like, oh, the dollar is losing its value as the world reserve currency and that is the end of the American dominance of the dollar. I think the exact freaking opposite is going to happen. The dollar will become even more powerful. America is becoming even more powerful. Exactly again the opposite of what everybody was thinking. Isn't that hilarious? Friends, then this is of course not beautiful for Bitcoin. That is not beautiful for Bitcoin because we know that Bitcoin only pumps when the dollar dumps. There's a very strong anti-correlation, and if you don't believe me, I will just load it. I have shown it quite a few times, but it's just noteworthy every time to see how very much anti-correlated Bitcoin and the dollar are. So you see here in orange the dollar index. Every time the dollar index makes highs, that means Bitcoin bear market, and when the dollar index dumps, that means Bitcoin bull market or Bitcoin makes a high. Here also the exact opposite, and here when the dollar index had its low, that was when Bitcoin made its high. And when the dollar started going on to this crazy rampage, it's absolutely no coincidence that this is exactly the time here was the low mid last year, and that was exactly the time when Bitcoin was making its highs. And as soon as the dollar index started going into a crazy rampage, that was the time when Bitcoin started to fall. So as long as the dollar index is super strong, friends, we can freaking forget Bitcoin reaching new all-time highs. We can say ciao. We can say ciao to Bitcoin making new all-time highs. We can say freaking ciao. But maybe there's still hope, friends. Maybe there's still hope. The Nasdaq was a bit surprisingly strong yesterday. The stock market was surprisingly a bit stronger than expected, and we are now sitting at this resistance. And if the Nasdaq would manage to break through this falling structure, this falling wedge structure, which normally is a bullish structure, if we would manage to break through, there's still hope that we at least get some kind of bounce for Bitcoin, because as you can see in this chart here, Bitcoin is just hilariously correlated to the stock market. I mean, look at this freaking funny correlation. Green is positive correlation. We are now sitting at over 0.6 positive correlation between Bitcoin and the stock market, which is just freaking hilarious. I'm very sure that this is exactly what Satoshi Nakamoto intended when he created Bitcoin in 2008. This was exactly what he intended, that Bitcoin becomes the little freaking of the stock market. But I'm sure that Satoshi, if he still lives or if he's watching this stuff, he is having a very good time to see that the asset that he created to deliver us from evil, which he created to end the tyranny of the banksters, has freaking joined the banksters and has now become one-to-one correlated to the stock market. That is exactly what Satoshi intended. Thank you, Bitcoin. Thank you. Now the S&P 500 also saw some slight recovery yesterday because of course the dollar was dumping due to the sell the news situation. Therefore the stock market is a bit recovering, but I wouldn't be happy too soon because the VIX still is not looking too good. If we are lucky, then we could see some kind of relaxation of the VIX because the VIX has been in this long-term triangle, and we know that every time a triangle breaks out to the upside, that means huge dumps. And the VIX has been doing this triangle here since November 2021. So if we are lucky, that would relax now, go retest this lower trend line here, and that means of course pumps. And then we could go back, retest this resistance line here. That means of course dumps. And then we could get this final brutal spike. Normally it goes to the 50 range. If we see historically, normally it goes to the 50 range. That is where the most spikes end. So we could get this final spike, and that of course means the final dump of the stock market, and then we would finally see the VIX going down again over longer periods of time, and that means that the stock market would continue pumping. But of course that can only happen when the freaking Fed stops raising the interest rates like crazy maniacs, because they have not realized apparently yet that the USA's biggest problem right now is not freaking inflation anymore, but a freaking potential recession. Okay? Because if we look at commodities, prices of commodities are coming down. Crude oil is starting to drop. Look at this. We went from 121 down to 92, 93, now rebounded a bit, and we are sitting now at 96. But as it looks, friends, this was a super long-term bearish divergence. I mean, this was a super long-term bearish divergence. Look at it, how hilariously bearish this divergence was. So I'm pretty sure that this is not over yet and that we will go lower. But not only oil is dumping, but all commodities. Copper, for example. Like, look at copper. Look at copper. Look how copper was dumping. You see? And that is not only copper, it's also happening with gold, with silver. So all commodities are dumping now. So that of course means that inflation is coming down. And the next big event will be the CPI reading that comes out on the 13th of July. And if the CPI is lower than expected, so if now, because all commodities are dumping, I think the probability is pretty high that the CPI reading will be lower than expected, so inflation is lower than expected. That could mean that the Fed will not raise as aggressively in July, hopefully, if they are not complete crazy psychos. But I think at the latest for the meeting in September, which will be on the 21st of September, I think that the Fed will at least pause or not raise as aggressively anymore if they are not complete psychopaths, which I really hope. If they are, of course, complete psychopaths, friends, then we are going down. Then we are going down if they just continue raising without any regard for the US economy. Then of course we are going down, friends. We are going freaking down. We are following the stock market, because Bitcoin is following the stock market, as Satoshi certainly is very happy about. And that would mean, of course, that we would just linger here at these very low levels, and we could go even lower. I mean, we could go even below this trend channel here. We could retest $12,000, $13,000 before at some point we would finally start going up again. But this, of course, will only happen when the Fed finally starts loosening again and doesn't go on tightening like crazy maniacs. Now, the altcoins are also very pathetic, friends. The altcoins are absolutely not doing freaking anything. They have suddenly decided that they will just also linger around here. No trace whatsoever of a potential altcoin rally or a potential altcoin season. They are just lingering here like complete embarrassing idiots. And I think they will just start pumping when Bitcoin starts rebounding in some form. So Bitcoin needs to rebound in some form, at least make a nice bounce that we can see some good altcoin action happening. It will not happen before. So you can see the situation is really not nice. I'm freaking annoyed by this stuff. That's why I rebranded this channel to the Angry Coin Guy, because I'm freaking angry all the time, because this market makes me so freaking angry. Honestly, I'm not exaggerating, because I really wake up every day and I think, wow, maybe today will not be a shitty day in the coin market. But it is still a shitty day, like almost every day. So I decided to rebrand this channel, and now I can finally rant, like I can let it all out, because it is in the branding of this channel. So the channel will get maybe a bit more aggressive, maybe a bit more brutal, but I think it's important to vent out the hate that we have built up here, so that we can clear our minds. Because when you let it all out, friends, you clear your minds, you calm down again, and then we can maybe see what is going to happen in the market. And I still maintain the theory that Bitcoin will surprise us all with a funny bounce at some point, break through this resistance line, and then we are thinking amazing, but then bam, it's dropping again, and only at some point later in late 2023 or maybe 2024 we will start pumping again. That is my current picture. for the most likely scenario. If that would change, I would of course let you know. So that is my current picture, friends. I hope you find the brutal new branding of the channel funny. I hope you think that this is a good idea. If not, I will still do it. I'm sorry, because I'm freaking annoyed every day, and that is, I think, the best direction I can take the channel in, because I want this to be the most brutal coin channel on YouTube, the most aggressive one, where we can rant like crazy maniacs without holding back. So then, friends, have a nice day, and then see you in the next crypto video tomorrow. Ciao!